Welcome back, Rebels.
Welcome back to the final episode of Series 1.
I bet everyone thought it was going to be the final episode there, didn't they?
Yeah, not the final episode of all time. That would be sad. But this is happy news. It's the final episode of Series 1, but we're not going to leave you waiting for long. Series 2 is out on the 17th of January 2020, and rather than taking a break, we're going to give you 3 brand new episodes next week with incredible guests.
Yeah, super exciting. Like, I was actually out yesterday talking about who we've got lined up, said one of the guests that is coming out next week, and the guy was like, oh my God, I love him. He's amazing. So yeah, little teaser there for you, but it's really, really exciting.
Well, so I know who that was then, because 2 of them are girls, so I know which one it was. But yeah, we are so excited about Series 2, which is launching, as we said, next week, 17th of January. To celebrate Series 1, we have collated some of our favourite episodes and just pulled out some little clips of bits that we found really interesting in those episodes. Due to us not wanting it to be a 5-hour podcast, we have only chosen 4 episodes, and that was bloody hard.
Yes, so many episodes are amazing. So to pick those 4 were really, really, really hard. But I think we've managed to pick 4 that are different enough, and they kind of highlight the different kinds of people that we've spoke to over the past year.
They do, and they also highlight some really important things that I think have become like core principles for us, core beliefs that we're trying to get across to you guys every week. So you'll find a lot in this episode about comfort zones, getting out of your comfort zone, being confident in your sales and marketing, being confident in yourself.
Self-confidence is something we're really going to be talking about in this coming episode. It was really great to be able to look back on the previous year and kind of really pick out those little nuggets that we think are going to help you the most to just listen back to.
Yes, lots of lovely nuggets. And when you talk about confidence, I guess for us, like, the past year has been such a wild ride for us, but confidence has definitely been something that's grown for us over the past year.
Yeah, it's definitely been massive for me. Like, my confidence just of being on microphone, like, I remember the first time we recorded, listening back to that, and I was like, well, this is awful, this just isn't going to work. And then the idea of like having a camera sat in front of us like we do now was just ridiculous.
Did you delete that first ever ramble that we did?
Probably.
If you find it, then we should release it.
Yeah.
Just with like a warning on it of like, this is terrible, but just to let people know how terrible. Because like when we do talks, especially if we're doing like talks to young people, I'll always put a slide in there that's like, don't compare your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 20. And I put in my chapter 1 of my early graffiti paintings, which are just absolutely shit. And like, yeah, so it would be, because I listened back the other day to our first episode with Emma Gannon, expecting it to be awful, and it's quite good. And I was like, oh shit. But what we didn't put out was those early bumblings of us just like trying to get through an episode, and just at that point we were like, well, we're never ever going to have a podcast because we are bad at this.
Yeah, I think that was a real learning curve. We had to learn really quickly as well, because we had an idea of one we wanted to launch, and it was just going into it with like we need to get good really quickly, or at least like good enough.
Possible, yeah.
To get to that stage. So I'm really glad that we did do those practice swings, because if we went straight into it, like, it wouldn't have lasted.
yeah. So there's been like, it's just been an incredible year for us, and I think one of the main takeaways from me is has been like you guys, has been the audience, has been interacting with people. We've done a lot of events in the past year. We've been out there kind of meeting people, meeting listeners to the show, and that's been incredible. Learned a lot through doing that. And because we just put out our 6-part course, if you haven't listened to it yet, it's kind of all of the basic things that you need to start any project, and you'll find that in the archives. And at the end of that, we were talking about using the hashtag Creative Rebels, and a bunch of people have been using that. So we encourage you to use the hashtag Creative Rebels on any creative work that you're making, but also to go on Instagram and search for hashtag Creative Rebels and follow that hashtag, because then you'll see other listeners posting their work. It will give you guys a chance to interact, support each other, and I mean, together we can bloody take over the world.
Yeah, like, there's so much that you guys know that you can help other people with, and to grow those connections and to have that community with other people in it rather than just talking to us directly, like, you're going to get so much from it. Like, our community is amazing, and there's so many of you who would massively benefit from talking to each other. So
Yeah, we talk to you in our DMs all the time, and it's so often been a thing of like, how are we going to like start getting people to connect with each other? So this is the way to do it. So we know that a lot of you are dancers, some of you are teachers, some of you are poets, some of you are painters, like all the things you guys are. So if you're following #Creative Rebels on Instagram, if you are a graphic designer, maybe one of the dancers is going to post up that they need a new logo and you guys can collaborate. And so connections are going to happen that way, and we are here for it. We're also going to be sharing stuff that we find on #Creative Rebels that we think is dope. We're going to be sharing on our stories and stuff like that.
Yeah, and what we're also going to do as well is every now and again we're going to go through and just pick people to have one-on-one sessions with us, whether that'll be coming to the studio, get to kind of meet us and sit with us, and we'll talk you through whatever your problems are and really help you out. Or if you're a bit further away, maybe just a phone call. Like, we're happy to like pick up the phone to people who are using that hashtag.
Yes, I jumped on a 45-minute call with a listener recently to guide her through her business. So yeah, that's definitely something that we are open to doing. So these 4 episodes are in no particular order. We're going to start off with someone who we were hugely grateful to get on the show, which is Debbie Millman. Debbie is a bit of a legend, especially when it comes to podcasting. Her podcast is the first and the longest running podcast of all the podcasts.
Yeah, she was the first podcast that I ever listened to. I remember, God, it would have been probably about 7 years ago now, like just having my phone and just finding this podcast app, because David had probably mentioned podcasts because he's been listening to podcasts for a long time now. So I was like, I want to find something that's relevant to me. And I've always been interested in design and found her podcast Design Matters. And that was like my go-to podcast for ages. Like, I can still picture getting back off holiday, like landing like on the plane, looking out the airport as we were pulling into one of the bays and having her podcast in. And I can really visually remember exactly what the episode was about. And I actually years later bought the book of the person who I was listening to on that episode, just because it's stuck in my mind so like visually.
Yeah, and then we find ourselves sat in her office in New York at the School of Visual Arts, just
mind-blowing.
Insane.
Absolutely mind-blowing.
And she had an amazing office, so generous with her time. We met Milton Glaser while we were there. It was just absolutely insane. So
yeah, just like, I think one thing for me that I've told a lot of people about her office is just like the sheer amount of books in there, and a lot of them were gifted to her by guests of the show, and she's been running for like 16 years, so there's a lot of books on that shelves, all signed. Like, I love the card game Cards Against Humanity, and in now is a little box with a signed box by the founders of that. I was just like, everything in here is just so cool. Like, it's great to meet people who you can aspire to be, and they're just so inspiring.
Yeah, we both want to be Debbie Millman. So
yeah,
let's get into this first clip where Debbie's talking about branding.
Branding for me, to me, is manufacturing meaning. So we create meaning through marks, through constructs. What's interesting about that phenomenon is that we manufacture this meaning, and then we all agree that meaning means something. It's very meta, and it's very human. We're the only species on the planet that can do this. So we'll create something that we signify means something, and then we'll expect that everybody will agree with what that meaning is.
So that is, it's kind of complicated, but to break that down, it's basically saying branding is, because we talked about it in the mini episode of having a reason to do something, why it is that you're making what you make, and then when people see your logo or your website or your branding, everything that falls under the branding umbrella, they know what to expect when they see your brand.
I suppose if you think of any big brands that are out there, you can always relate a bit of meaning to them. So if you just went to someone in the street and showed them like the Nike swoosh and said, what does this mean? First they'd say, well, that's Nike. And then if you said, yeah, but what does it mean? What do they stand for? Almost anyone in the street could tell you that. And the same with like Apple, and the same with a lot of really big brands. And I think that's the power of a brand, and that's what a brand is. It's not just that mark, it's everything that's behind it. And yeah, talking to Debbie was super interesting to just get that insight from her of, well, she's a branding expert. Like, she designed the Burger King logo. She's done so many things over her career. And it's understanding that, yeah, branding isn't that visual identity. It's not graphic design. It's not just that thing. It's the message that's behind it. It's the kind of all of the people who work for that company. It's everything that it stands for. It's so much more than just a bit of graphic design.
The bit of graphic design is the mark, but then the meaning that comes with the mark, that is the branding. So yeah, it was really interesting to talk to someone who obviously their whole life has been branding, and she teaches the class on branding at New York School of Visual Arts. So just an expert in her field. And if anyone's not listened to that episode, go back, especially if you're interested in branding, because there's so much there. So how would you say that? How do you start to manufacture the meaning behind your brand?
I think that all comes down to firstly understanding who your audience is. And because branding is basically positioning of like how you position yourself in the market. It's not just the way you visually look, it's the whole like how you position yourself. So it's like who's my audience and how do I want to appear to those people? It's like, I think if you think of branding as the way you portray yourself. So if you think of yourself, like if we go down the personal branding route, it's like how do you want other people to know you? It's like, do you want to be known as the guy who's great at tech? Do you want to be known as the person who's a really good artist? It's like your face, who you are is your logo. That's your visual mark. And it's like when someone looks at you, they'll see you. But if they know you, then they'll know who you are, what you like, all of these different things about you, why you do the things you do. And the clearer you can display that and the clearer you can let someone else understand that, I think that's what branding is. It's being able to look at something and know what's the other side of that facade. It's not just this static object. It's like who you are and what you're all about.
And I think that gets better the more confident you get, because you're then more able to be more clear because you're confident in what your message is and what you're doing. So don't worry if you don't have it right at the start. And that is the perfect segue, unplanned. That leads us into our next clip.
How can you expect to have confidence in doing something? A lot of people say, well, I'll just wait until I feel better about myself or feel like I have more confidence before I try that thing. But that's not the way it works. And we are not even able to walk confidently without falling. So why would we think that anything that we do for the first time we could do well just because we think we can do it well or we hope to do it well? And I started to really think about that. And I spent about a year trying to then create a definition of confidence, which I already shared with you, the successful repetition of any endeavor.
I couldn't agree more with that. It's like you can't become confident by reading about something. You can't become confident without actually doing it. I think this is where we talk about learning by doing, and confidence is one thing you can only learn that by doing it, like by going out there and getting yourself in the situations that feel uncomfortable, that feel scary.
Yeah, Debbie says you can't be good at anything that you do for the first time. And I think that comes down to marketing, sales, branding, anything that's wrapped up. So when you do start a new business, you're learning everything yourselves. And if you want to become creative for a career and not just a hobby, then that means you do have to learn those things. You have to learn those other sides of it. And to expect to go straight into it, and just because you're brilliant at one thing, to not expect to have to learn how to become good at the other things, like it's absolutely necessary.
The more things you do and the more things you get good at, the easier it is to learn, because I think you learn how to learn, and that gets easier with time. So when you're first starting out, the first thing you go and throw yourself in with is going to be really, really hard because you don't know how to learn properly yet. But when you've done that and you've learned that first thing, whatever that is, so whether you go in to do marketing first or branding first, I would say definitely concentrate on one at a time. Don't just try and do everything. Otherwise you won't get particularly amazing at anything. But once you've learnt branding, then a lot of skills you've learnt by doing that, you can then move to marketing. And you won't start at 0 again. You'll start at, say, 10, and then you've got to make your way up to 100. And when you've done those two things and you want to do some design, then there'll be certain things you've learned in there that means that when you start design, you'll start from 15. And it means that more and more things you learn, the easier and easier it is to learn.
Yeah, and you'll have a lot of transferable skills, even if you're working in a 9-to-5 that's not fulfilling you currently. There's probably a lot of things that you can take away from that. Just keep your eyes and ears open. Like, what is the marketing and the branding that happens in that business, and what can you learn from that when it comes to starting up your thing, you don't need to learn it from scratch because you've already had experience of it working in another business.
There's something really, really interesting that I heard that was about how most successful companies, in terms of like companies that have earned millions, have been started by people in their kind of like towards their 40s. So it's like they're not been started by these young kids. Obviously, you get the Mark Zuckerbergs, where people think these days that to have a successful company, you need to be this young person who's got this great idea and you're tech savvy, and that's the only way to become a millionaire. Most actual £1 million companies or $1 million companies or wherever you're based are started by older people, and that's because those people have the experience and they've learned lots of things through their lives. It's like we've got an upcoming episode with someone who worked for loads of different companies for years, learned loads and loads and loads, and then went and started his own company up, ran it for 3 years, and then sold it for a multi-million pound figure.
But yeah, no, I agree. And one thing that Debbie says in that clip as well is that a lot of people wait, and they wait because they think that they're going to get confident over time. And I think it's such an astute observation. And like waiting is not ever going to be good for you. Like you've just got to jump.
Because I suppose people hear that confidence comes with time, because that's true, because it does, but only if you're putting the work in to get there. It's they just assume, well, if I just sit here as I grow older, I will get more confident, but not realizing that the only people who do get more confident are the people who are going out and trying the things that they're not confident in again and again and again to get confident.
It's so interesting. We've spoken like privately before about how language is so important, and we see a lot of kind of comments in places where people say things like, "I'm thinking about starting my new podcast next year," and 99% of the time that is not going to happen, because the language is allowing you to let yourself off the hook. I'm thinking of doing something means that if I don't actually do it, then you can't hold me up on it. You can't say, but you said you were going to do a podcast. No, I never said that. I said I was thinking of doing a podcast.
It's really funny. I remember meeting someone who was just like asking me questions about business and stuff. And I was like, "Oh, so what's your plan for the future?" And they said, "Well, I'm thinking about doing this." And then straight away I was like, well, because the fact you said you're thinking about it and you're not going to do, you didn't say I'm going to do this. I mean, I was like, you're probably not going to do it. You need to get in the mindset of you're going to do this. It's like, I think James Clear talks about in his book Atomic Habits.
Great book.
Really good book. Definitely recommend that. That's one for the reading list this year if you haven't read it already. He talks about giving up smoking and how if you speak to someone who's just trying to quit smoking and you say like, "Oh, here's the cigarette," they'll say, "No, I'm trying to quit," because that's the mindset that they're currently in. Whereas if you gave it to me, like, "I don't smoke," I'd be like, "I don't smoke." So it's that different mindset. Whereas if someone who's trying to quit smoking says, "No, I don't smoke," or "No, I'm not a drinker," or "No, this is not me," it's that definitive yes or no. It's not that, "Oh, well, maybe," and then you can't blame me if I do it wrong.
Yeah, knowing yourself, and then within knowing yourself, that's where you'll find the confidence to go forward, definitely. And so as Debbie alludes to at the end there, she's already mentioned earlier in the episode that the repetition of success is what will bring you confidence. So the first painting I ever did was not great, but the more successful paintings that I created, the incremental progression that I made meant that my confidence grew as a painter. It's that repetition and that putting in the time and continuing to push through, to grow and to keep on improving. That is what's going to bring you confidence.
Yeah, like it happened a lot when we first started our company, Graffiti Life. There'd be a brief that you hadn't done before. So you hadn't painted a car, you haven't done a certain metallic look or something. You're like, well, I probably could do that. And it's by being there and trying it that you're like, oh, actually, I can do that. And then it got to a stage in our business where we've been running for so many years, and no matter what people came to us with, we were confident that we could go and execute that. And it was just through throwing ourselves into situations that felt uncomfortable, felt scary, but we had that little bit of hope that we could do it. And it was by doing that again and again and again that we're now at a stage where we can paint anything. Like, I don't think there's anything that someone could come to us and say, "Can you paint this?" And we would say no. There'd be some things that we were like, that would take us 2 months, but it would never be enough.
Well, the myth of the last opportunity is that if you don't do this specific thing, you'll never have another opportunity to do anything else ever again. And that comes, I think, from a mindset of scarcity as opposed to abundance.
So just a quick little one to end there. We had to stick that one in just because I think scarcity mindset is so bad and you should always try and get out of it if possible. So a scarcity mindset would be that you have to take this job because it's going to be the last one that you're ever going to get, or you take on something that that you know someone who could do it much better, but you keep it for yourself because you think, I need this, I need the paycheck. Whereas actually through giving it to someone else, you're potentially going to be growing your network and developing relationships with people that are going to be a lot more fruitful long term than just taking a job because you think it's going to be the last one.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? It's the long-term thinking compared to the short-term thinking. Obviously, it's really, really hard to say to someone, like if you just said to us 9 years ago when we started our business, here's a job for £400, that we could probably blag ourselves. Like we would have just taken it because we needed the money. But it's really hard when there's a balance, isn't there, of like when you're absolutely desperate, you're sometimes going to have to take things. But then as you slowly get a bit further down the road, by saying no to stuff or by giving them to other people and only working on things that are actually going to benefit you personally and benefit your own business, then it's that mindset of it's a long-term game and you need to play the long-term game if you want to do this forever. It's better to kind of like plant all the seeds now for them to grow within the next 10 years rather than just kind of eating those seeds now for that little bit of sustenance.
He's gone for another metaphor. Yeah, loved that episode with Debbie. One of our favourites, definitely. One of the next episodes that we chose was Esme.
Esme is so inspiring. I remember the first time I met her like a year ago or something now, just having a really good chat with her and being like, we need to get her on the show because she's just so on it. Such like a genuinely nice, hardworking, just inspiring person.
Yeah, super inspiring. Yeah, that was the kind of the feeling that I was left with, was inspiring and inspired by grit and determination and never giving up, putting yourself in difficult situations. The fact that she was paralyzed from the waist down,
yeah,
and then overcame it and can walk and has been on the SAS TV show and is just like incredible.
She's successful because of the hard work that she's put in, and that's completely paid off. And she's still really early on in her journey, but I know she's going to do so well in life because she has that absolute drive and determination to whatever she wants to happen will happen.
And one thing that was overwhelming was her positivity. But we actually got into an interesting conversation about the different kinds of positivity.
When people look at positive and they're like, oh, be positive, because sometimes you can't be positive about something. And sometimes actually I think being positive about a situation is hiding from it.
Yeah.
It can go like a bit the wrong way.
Delusion,
where you just go, oh, my house is burned down, but I'm going to be positive. I can always get a new one. Yeah, and it's actually what it's about. It's being positive to me is about sitting in the problem for a bit, feeling like the depth of it, actually like, you know, go into probably a bit of a horrible place with it, but then getting yourself out of it by being positive. Whereas a lot of the time positivity is mistaken and it's just like, be positive, cover it up.
Yeah.
And don't feel it. And this is where you can get people that end up having like breakdowns, like the positive people where they're always happy, smiling, and then suddenly they just break down like, I can't do it anymore. It's like, because you can't sustain that. It's not sustainable to always look on the bright side. Like one of my favourite quotes that someone said to me is, you can let it ruin your lunch, but don't let it ruin your dinner.
That's
and I was
great.
like, that's so good because you go to lunch and you talk about it and you get annoyed about it and you cry about it, but then by dinner you've come up with a solution and you're moving forward from it.
So wise words there. I think big takeaway for me was not being delusional. So always being like, yeah, everything's great, everything's brilliant. Like actually recognizing what the problems are, because it's not until you sit down and you go, actually, this is shit, but here's how I'm going to tackle it. And it's the lunch and dinner problem, like don't let it spoil your dinner, is like, okay, well, what have we got here? And then what are our roots around it? How are we going to fight it?
The way that I take it is like, if you're doing something, you're trying to make a living doing something, you need to be good at doing it. You need to be talented. You need to put the hard work in to get really good. A lot of people are very delusional about the fact that they can do something because someone like their mum's told them they're great. I think you'd really need to grow a network around you of people who are really, really honest, people who can tell you like, is this good? Is this bad? What do you need to work on?
I suppose the wonderful thing about that is that anybody can learn to become good at anything. It's just time and practice that you're willing to put into something. On the topic of staying positive, it can be a really difficult thing to do, especially if you're a creative person, if you're working alone a lot and you get inside your own head. And I've often found that like problems, if I wake up in the night worrying about something, it seems like insurmountable, but it's only when the actual day starts and you can actually sit and deal with it that it becomes much easier to actually dissect. And I think I've certainly found that in the past with my sister, who will really, really worry about things, work them into huge problems in her head. But it's only when you actually sit and you write it down and you go through point by point. She's worried about life in general and all of these things that are all feeding in, and I haven't got enough money for this and that, and I'm doing badly in this job, and that means and everything's leading to everything else. But when you take each problem individually and you just sit down and write them down, then that's when you're able to like deal with them. And that's what Esme was talking about there of like, and it works with the same with positivity and negativity, not letting anything overwhelm you, but just sitting and saying, what actually is this and how actually can I deal with it?
As you were kind of saying there, is like making that list is so important, and not only making the list of what you're dealing with and what the problems are, but making a separate list of, well, how do I answer all of these? How do I solve all of these problems? And if you just look at it as a whole, it's so overwhelming and so daunting that you're just like, you just freak out and you're like, I can't do this. But once you do break it down and you say, well, if I can't do this, why can't I do it? Well, if I learn to do this, then that wouldn't be a problem anymore. And going through all of these issues, it's just going to make you a stronger, more confident, more positive person.
So this next clip delves into, I guess, taking yourself out of your comfort zone.
If I went to you right now, right, I can go and put you in pain right now and you can get yourself out of it. Why would you choose to do that when you know you don't have to? And this is the problem. And as societies, developing in all these different ways, and social media and things are so available for us, and when you look back 50 years ago, 100 years ago, how they worked then and how they got to communicate then and how they had to work for it, everything we've got right now is on demand. And the reason people aren't developing these skills to be resilient and have grit and say, I haven't got it in me, I'm just this, I'm just that, and I can't do it, is because they don't need to anymore.
I think one thing that really gets to me is when people say I can't do it and they haven't tried, or they just don't have the confidence to go and do that. It's like, you can do it. You literally can go out there and do it. It's just putting yourself in that discomfort. And as we say a lot, growth and comfort can't coexist. And it's completely true. Like everything that's good, everything that grows you as a person is done when it's hard. If it was really easy, everyone would be doing it. But it's putting yourself out into those hard situations where good things happen. Like as Esme was saying there, it's like, if I said to you, I'm going to go and put you in an uncomfortable situation, you have to get out of it. Of course, you're not going to want that, but you need to think, why is that happening? Like, why are you in that situation? What can you learn from that? So if I reframe the question as, I'm going to put you in this uncomfortable situation, but you're going to struggle out of it and you're going to learn something from that that's going to make it better for you going forward. That's the way you need to approach anything that seems hard. It's like, I don't want to go and do this, but why? But what? How can I add a positive to this? What will come out of this that will benefit me? And I know you talk about a lot about looking at a situation and it's like, how is this the best thing that's ever happened to me?
Yeah, that's a technique that I use. How is this the best thing that's ever happened? Even if clearly it's not the best thing that's ever happened. But it's just by looking at you can look at a situation in a new way and you can get things from it. You can get lessons from it rather than just a kick in the nuts. We're in a situation in 2020 where even if we don't have it great, it's never been better. Like statistically, it's never been better. And so for a lot of people, that just results in, I guess, just a really average life. In the 50s and 60s and 70s and 40s and 30s and 20s, that was all we could ask for, was like, that was the perfect life, was being able to bring that money in to put that roof over your head and have a family. But now, because that's kind of taken care of, most people, if they are earning a minimum wage, if you are living it, just hitting that regular 9 to 5, like maybe there is something more, but you're only going to find that if you reach out of your comfort zone. Because just because it's comfortable doesn't mean that it's great. Do you know what I mean? It's like you could be going into work every day and absolutely miserable, but you're still surviving.
So it's really assessing, should you be in that situation? Should you get yourself out of that comfort zone? Because there might be better things out there. Like if you're in a comfort zone and everything's great in your life, then great. Like, but most people aren't in that situation.
Yeah, and what we found is that the rewards are so great when you've struggled and you've worked for something. And I think that we talk about a lot in this episode with Esme, but there's not an internal sense of fulfillment that you get from winning the lottery or being gifted something. And although it sounds great, or if all of a sudden you're going to be given a huge sum of money or something that you don't have to work for, it actually ends up being very empty and it doesn't actually fulfill you.
The power of language, its internal language is so powerful, external and internal. And I've done exercises with people, wellness speeches that I've done. So I've got the whole room to stand up from their chairs and I say, take a seat, but just before you get to your chair, hover above it. And then I say, sit down when you want. Like, there's no catches, there's no like literally, there's no prizes. When you want, just sit down. And about 12 to 17 seconds in, the whole room sat down, 200 people sat down, right? So I say, right, stand up again. You can do the same thing. You're going to sit down and you're going to go do an inch above your chair, all right? And then you're going to listen to me. And what I need you to do is I need you to take something very important in your life, something very, very special to you. It can be a person or a thing, and I want you to put that on your back. You sit down, you drop them. You drop that thing. And if you don't like anyone enough, then you can choose a goal. That goal that you really want, that you wake up every day moaning that you don't have, that's available for you at the end of this squat hold. If you really want, you sit down, it's gone. It's gone forever. And I make them go to a minute and then they stop at a minute. They could go on forever at this point. And that is all about language. Or I say to them and I make them realise, the only thing that changed was my language. I didn't change the exercise. I didn't make you all stronger suddenly. I didn't give you a protein drink that made you like Popeye. All I did was change my language. And if I can do that externally to you, think how capable you are internally.
So I love that little exercise of, as soon as people have got something more that they care about, they're able to go much further on the exercise. And I mean, it's just a silly little exercise of hovering above your seat, but it is so important, the language that we use and the goals that we hold in our head, and the reason. And I suppose it comes back to like start with why, of why you are doing what you're doing, and that will be enough to sustain you, or be enough to sustain you through a squat hold, but also be enough to sustain you through doing your tax return, or doing paperwork, or just like the real gritty parts of your business that no one enjoys doing. It's if you're doing it for some cash, it's not going to sustain you. Whereas if you're doing it for a wider reason, there's something you're trying to help the world in some way, you're trying to change something, that's what will actually sustain you. So moving on then to another favourite episode. This was easy to agree on this one, wasn't it? This definitely, was definitely in our kind of top for last year, and that was Marie Forleo. And we actually tried to get Marie on the podcast when we were in New York, but we couldn't make it work. But managed to grab her when she was over in the UK promoting her new book, Everything is Figureoutable. And what an incredible episode!
Like, what an incredible episode, and what an incredible book as well. Like, in researching that, like reading and listening through to her book, I was like, this, it's so good. I think by chapter 4 of listening to the audiobook, I bought a physical copy for my girlfriend, because I was like, it's just great. It summarizes a lot of really good things really, really well. She's been doing this for absolutely years, like such an amazing person. We were so like fortunate to be able to sit down with her. Like, she's just a fountain of wisdom.
So first clip.
So the 3 rules of Everything is Figureoutable are this: all problems or dreams are figureoutable. Rule number 2, if a problem isn't figureoutable, it's not a problem, it's a fact of life, like death, gravity, or laws of nature. And rule number 3, you may not care enough to solve a particular problem or reach a particular dream, and that's totally okay. Find something you do care deeply about and go back to rule number 1.
I think that really, really nicely links on to the previous clip from Esme. It's just that, it's like finding that thing that you want to hold on your back. The thing that, it's like finding your why. It's that purpose of like, if you love something enough, you will make it happen. And because everything is figureoutable.
Yeah, I suppose when we did the mini-series, that's why the first episode was about Find Your Passion, because I think too many people, they may be creative, but they haven't found what truly lights them on fire yet. And I think it's really important to find that thing, because the more passionate you are about the thing that you find, the more likely you are to make it a success, because you will always keep it on your back. Even when things are heavy, you're not going to drop it. So
yeah, that's that thing, isn't it? It's like, when whatever you do, you know you're passionate about it, when in the hard times you can keep going. Like when you first start doing anything, if it's like Seth Godin calls it the dip, like you've got this little kind of rush of like, this is exciting, brand new, all shiny, like great. And then you carry on for a certain amount of time and it gets hard because the honeymoon period's worn off.
I suppose at that point also you're fighting over your human nature of we are programmed to find new things exciting. So all of a sudden it's not new anymore and it is actually hard work.
Yeah, and it's like by having something that you really care about, by having that why, that purpose, the reason you're doing it, the reason you get out of bed in the morning to go and do this thing. If you can find something you love that much, and it's like you can figure everything is figure outable. Everything that having that thing that really drives you will help you through the hard times. That's why we always going to say to people, don't start for the money, because if you go into it only for the money, when there's no money, there's nothing else. Whereas if you go into it with the belief that you're going to change something, where you're going to make yourself better, you've got a vision or something in mind. When there's nothing, when the phone's not ringing, you've still got that. And I think that's a really, really important thing to have, something to hold on to, that no matter what it is, even if there's no money coming in, I'm still happy. I'm still doing the thing that I love.
I think we've realised in the past year that this podcast is going to make us outrageously wealthy. And that's incredible and really, really awesome, but it's not what sustains us. It's kind of like a nice side effect. But it's the DMs that we get from people on a regular basis that say that this show's actually making a difference. Like that, like we have a why, a reason for doing this. And when I look at my life, I've always had that. Like I was teaching in a primary school because I wanted to help those kids. Starting our first business, we wanted to help a bunch of artists, which we kind of did. And then this podcast is almost the scaling of that, of like, okay, how can we help thousands of people? And then in doing that, as just kind of a hobby in the beginning, money has started to come in and we've started to realize, okay, well, maybe Creative Rebels is actually a business. So that's been really interesting for us. But so with the 3 rules there of everything's figure outable, she says, if a problem isn't figure outable, it's not a problem, it's a fact of life. And like that's because, as soon as she says something, there's someone thinking like, oh, what can I think of that's not figure outable? Yeah. And it's like really 99% of things are figure outable. I love how we're just using that like it's a proper word, like all the time. It's figure outable.
I feel like I say it all the time now as well, like figure outable, because it says so much, and I feel like it should be a word, and I feel like if enough people use it, then hopefully it'll just get put in a dictionary one day.
Yeah. But yeah, so if there is something that you care strongly about, you can work out how to figure it out. And then the 3rd rule is if you don't care strongly enough, then pick something else. And I think that's so important. And it's working out the actual thing that's driving you forward, because if you're doing something and it doesn't feel right, then it's probably not going to sustain you. Like trust your gut, listen to yourself, listen to what you're saying to yourself. If something doesn't feel right, it's probably not right. Yeah,
that goes a lot to when we talk about finding your passion, and how you might try something for a while and then you realize, oh, actually this isn't that thing for me. So you go and try something else. And then if that doesn't fire you up enough, try something else, because you will find that thing eventually. It will come. It just takes a lot of trying and doing lots of different things.
I realized, first of all, that so many creatives pull back from sales and marketing because they have an outdated understanding of what it is. They think you have to be aggressive, that you have to be manipulative, that you have to be dishonest, that you have to convince people to do something that they don't want to do, and somehow you're going to like take their money, and if you make money, they're going to somehow have less. There's like a lot of scarcity. There's a lot of zero-sumness going on. And I also saw the more that I built my ability to communicate effectively, that I understood copywriting, that I understood digital marketing, I watched my business grow. But it wasn't just about the financial numbers for me. I watched the impact I could make, and I got addicted to that. And I saw that the better I got at sales and marketing, everything got better.
I mean, that just is exactly what we were talking about with Creative Rebels. Impact is such a good word, and that's what it is, isn't it? Is having an impact, impacting as many lives as possible. And it's also okay to get paid to do that. Yeah,
and so many artists have this idea of, I shouldn't get paid to do what I love because I love doing it, so why should I charge for it? And a lot of artists that we talk to who seem a bit stuck, like they don't really know what to do because they're creating great art, but they're not making any money from it, which is what they want to do. Like there's a lot of people who talk to us like, oh, when do I monetize? When do I start accepting money for this? and realizing that if you want to do art as a business, if you want to make money from it, for it to be your living, you have to be able to sell and market it. Like, you just have to.
And I suppose that goes back to what Marie says at the start of that clip of people have this misunderstanding of what marketing actually is. And she uses the words aggressive, manipulative and dishonest.
Yeah, because I think, I remember like when I was at uni, I didn't understand what there was a marketing world and what marketing was. And I suppose my opinion of what sales would be my phone ringing and someone really annoying on the other end trying to sell me something that I don't want. And so to me, and I imagine that's to a lot of people as well, they think of sales as this thing that's just like irritating.
Yeah.
It's like a sales call where just like you pick it up and you're like, oh, stop calling me. Like, I've told you 4 times now that I don't want this thing that you're trying to sell me. Please stop wasting my time. But it's not about that. It's about finding a group of people who care about that thing. Like, I think Gary Vee talks about it a lot, how he says, don't try and change people's mind. Don't go to someone and be like, here's a blue jumper, you have to wear this blue jumper. But they're like, I hate blue. No, you should wear it because you look great in it. But I really don't like blue. And it's like, don't force someone to do something. Just let them know that your thing exists and how they can benefit from it.
Yeah, and then all the blue lovers will find it.
Yeah, because if you force it down someone's throat, they're only going to be like, oh.
And I guess if you know that they love blue already, then
yeah.
And then by you saying, I know you love blue, here's something blue, like, are you into that? And like, that's not aggressive and it's not manipulative. It's just true. Like, I sell blue, you like blue, we're a match made in heaven.
I think the nice way to think about marketing and sales in general is just awareness. Just letting people know that it exists and it's for sale and they can have it if they want to. Don't try and mold people to you. Just go to them and say like, look, yeah, it's here if you want it.
Yeah, and another thing that we talked about in this episode was when Marie was saying, if you're not doing that, then you're stealing from people. So her theory is that if you're a creative and you have something to offer the world, and again, let's use that word again, like to make impact, if there's something that you have that can do that and you're not sharing it with the people who would benefit from it, then you're stealing from them. You're not giving them something that could enrich their lives. So the way that you're going to do that is you're going to communicate through your sales and your marketing that it exists.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be salesy in the kind of traditional sense. It's just letting people know that it's here in a way that they can understand.
Yeah. Another thing that Marie brought up, like, that's why I love that clip, because there's so much packed into it. Another thing she mentioned was scarcity. And that's something that I really want to get across to people, is that just because you're getting paid, there isn't like, well, I suppose there is a finite amount of money in the world, but like, just by you making profit doesn't mean that other people are going to have less. And the person that you're charging for your product or service, if you're enriching their lives, then that's a fair value exchange. I was speaking to someone recently who's got a really interesting business, and I was kind of looking at her website and stuff. And on her website, she'd kind of apologized for where her prices had gone up. And she was like, oh, but it's still great value, blah, blah, blah. I was like, get rid of that. Change it right now. I was like, do you believe that? So to break it down, the business is ponies, and people come and ride the ponies and they learn about how to take care of them and do horse whispering with them and all this stuff. I was like, when people come and visit the ponies, do they have an enjoyable experience? And she was like, well, yeah, they absolutely love it. Like, they take 1 million photos. Sometimes the ponies are dressed like unicorns, and like, literally it's just like joyful. Everyone's having an amazing time. I was like, you are offering an incredible experience. You do not have to apologize for charging for that. And especially when you look at her why, it's to increase awareness of these beautiful animals, and it's to she rehabilitates ponies and she's caring for them and doing a great thing. That's her why, is like to care for as many ponies as possible. So I was like, you're not taking their money so that you can drive a Maserati. You're taking their money so that you can care for more ponies. So everything here is fine. You don't need to apologize for it. But it's just that funny feeling when money comes in that creatives sort of get that kind of guilt that's around money. Yeah,
definitely. If you've got a purpose or a cause you're trying to go towards, by charging for it and getting the money, it's only going to allow you to do more of that, which is the reason you're doing it to start with. So the more you can charge, the more money you can get, is great, because that's the more you can help something else. It's It's brilliant.
Yeah, and just to shout that business out, it's at the Pony Ranch on Instagram if you want to see those ponies, which I'm sure you do. Everyone's putting the podcast down now to go on the ponies.
I think that patience is one of the most underrated qualities for creatives and entrepreneurs. Again, I feel like I'm just starting and I'm 20 years into my career.
Yeah, we always say the people who keep going are the ones that will win, because most people quit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because it's hard.
Yes.
It's really hard.
It's really hard. And, you know, success comes from what you do consistently, not what you do occasionally. And I think consistency along with patience is probably one of the other quote unquote secrets to success. Like, I've been creating content consistently for 20 years.
Yeah, super, super interesting. Like, it's just the way it is, isn't it? It's like, if you consistently do something for a really long period of time, good things will happen.
Yeah, I might get it tattooed on me. Consistency plus patience equals success. So to distill that quote down, that is my new mantra for 2020 for the rest of my life, is consistency plus patience equals success. And if everyone can remember that, consistency plus patience equals success. I'm saying it multiple times so it gets stuck in your head, that consistency plus patience equals success. Because like there's nothing else. There is nothing else. That's all you need.
And that comes to like growing a brand as well. It's like you get known for this thing. It's like, and you only get known for it if you're constantly doing it and you're constantly in people's heads. So it's like you always want to be that person that no matter what you're selling, whatever you're doing, whatever your thing is, you want it to be when anyone thinks of that, they think of you. And the only way you do that is by consistently putting content out, consistently doing your thing for a really, really long time. And then one thing I always like to add to that, because I think that is a great thing, but I think it should always be, there should be an extra little plus in there, which is to be able to learn and develop as you go along. Because if you consistently do something bad forever and you don't ever learn from your mistakes or learn from anything, then you won't get better. So I think there needs to be a level of like learning and development within that too. So
You're trying to turn my simple maths into an equation.
I always do. But I think it's a really important thing that you should consistently do stuff, but consistently learn as well. And I think that comes into the consistency, and just get a little bit better every time and make sure you are constantly pushing yourself. Because if you're in your comfort zone and you're consistently doing it and you're being patient, but you're still in your comfort zone,
It's
then
very
you're not
true.
growing.
Yeah. I mean, so for us now, like, we want to be known for creativity. We want to be known for like creative solutions for advertising, for marketing, when we were like in our business, when we're working with big brands and stuff like that. And if we had been making the same work that we started making 10 years ago, if we were still making that now, we wouldn't be known for creative solutions, because we'd just be doing murals. We'd just be doing hand painted murals. Everything would be the same.
Yeah, businesses and everything needs to evolve. Everything needs to grow and get better and better over time. Otherwise, people will overtake you and you'll get left behind. So it's always, you need to be at the forefront of whatever you're doing if you can do. And you only get to that stage by learning and developing your craft.
So we only got to showcase 4 episodes in this, our best of episode, and which I feel is like so underrepresentative for.
Yeah. Well, I feel like we could have gone on, this could be a 4-hour long show if we wanted it to be. But that's
like,
actually, and I think this might be one of our longest ever episodes. And that just shows, I think, the great guests we've had on this year and the amazing things they've said and just how inspiring they've been.
Yeah, it was really, really hard to just nail it down to just 4. But our final guest is Poppy Chancellor, who was, I think, because she's sort of a friend of ours, the interview just went in places that we didn't expect it to go. We both knew that like Poppy had kind of been struggling earlier in the year, but she hadn't really opened up about it, and we weren't sure whether she was going to talk about it. And she kind of really did on the podcast about everything, like losing her dad and how for a long time she'd been just powering through it and hiding the grief with work, and then all of a sudden just had this crash. And I had sent Poppy a message saying, "Oh, let's get you on the podcast," because it's something that we'd discussed in the past, and she was fully up for it at the time. And then I was like, "Oh, let's get you booked in," and she was just like, "I can't do it." She was like, "I can't. There's nothing I can say," and I was just like, "Wow," because Poppy, like she's super upbeat, and it was just
so positive, so happy, like this fun, energetic person that you just want to be around.
And yeah, to see your friend in this like really low place was really sad. And we offered out our sort of words of advice and just kind of bigging her up and telling her that she was amazing. But when she finally was ready to do the podcast, it was such a great episode. We both loved it.
And I think after the episode as well, it was really nice to kind of see what a dedicated audience she has. Like, people love her. She's such a wonderful person. Her artwork is amazing. I think she constantly inspires people to kind of better themselves, to be creative, which I think is so aligned in what we try and portray.
Yeah, it's interesting you say there actually about noticing how engaged her audience are. So the reason that we know that is because her episode is one of our most listened to episodes, and her following on social media is a lot lower than some previous guests we've had, but still her views are, and that's just because all of her fans are engaged with what she does. And that's like, we hope that I kind of feel like we've got fans that are like that as well.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the holy grail. If you are building something, you want fans that are not just like occasionally here or there, but like they're really interested in what you put out.
Die hard.
I think one of the interesting things for me in this episode was that Poppy's first client was her mum, and her mum said, like, Poppy owed her mum 500 quid, and her mum was like, oh, well, I'll give you 50 quid off your debt if for every kind of paper cut you make me. And so and like they were commissions for friends and for people. So by doing that, all of a sudden she had to sit down and create 10 pieces of work.
Yeah.
And I just love that kind of being forced into, straight out the bat, of like being forced to make the work. And I think it's very important, like if you are starting something new, rather than just sitting there and waiting for your first order, like put yourself in a situation where you have to create something first.
Yeah, her mum built her portfolio for her by forcing her to do that. And it's so great. It's like, everyone out there, if you're starting anything, you just got to force yourself through that situation at the start of building a portfolio. And no matter if that's like working for free, doing stuff for a friend, doing stuff for your parents, like someone that you know will be able to give you a job doing something. Or even if they don't, you can just do it yourself. And it's by getting that portfolio that you can then go to other people and say, like, look, this is the array of stuff that I do. Do you want me to do it for you? So yeah, it's like, you just need to have that body of work to start with, so people can trust that you can go and do this for them.
Yeah, it's so important. So this first clip here is basically around kind of using creativity to deal with grief.
What would you say to someone who's in that situation at the moment where you were 6 months ago?
I would say to be creative in whatever way comes naturally for you. So some people like journaling. Loads of people have been writing poems at our grief case meetings, whether they're poets or not. It's kind of just stream of thought. And, they can be angry, they can be sad, they can be like, please don't leave me, where have you gone? And at least that thought has then been realised and released in some way. I do a lot of writing as well as my paper cut work. And I think just like being active, like I found some amazing books about grief. There's a book called Grief Works by Julia Samuel that has totally just opened my eyes to the actual process of it and the reactions that you get from other people being like, oh yeah, people are scared to talk about it. Okay, so what do I say to somebody, and actually dealing with it, find podcasts. I think just tap into a world where you don't feel so alone. But so many people don't know that exists. So like you said, the Grief Cast with Carrie Lloyd is like an amazing place to just hear people's stories and realise that it's not just you that's in pain. Everyone has their own grief that they're dealing with, whether it's a loved one, a friend, a pet, whatever, and everyone is carrying pain somewhere. And it's just about, I think you become a lot more sympathetic when you've had a lot of pain, because you realise, God, that person that, is really dealing with something and they're doing really well. So yeah, just like seeking out information and sharing yourself with people that you trust.
Yeah.
So Poppy runs grief case meetings where people who are in the Dead Dad Club and the Dead Mum Club, or who are like they've lost someone that they care about, can go along to these grief case meetings, and everyone sort of talks and shares, and it's a wonderful way of kind of sharing that burden. And one thing Poppy mentioned there is just by journaling, like I guess letting the thoughts out like releasing them out from just cluttering around in your brain.
You can get yourself into a really negative place if you just keep it all inside, because it does tend to spiral and go out of control when, as soon as you get it out of you, whether that's talking to someone, writing it down, it just makes things so much better. Like whenever I've had a bit of kind of like stress or a bit of a meltdown, by just talking to other people, it makes things so much better. And I think what I really took from that Poppy said there was just the fact that there are other people out there going through the same thing that you are, no matter what it is, whether it's grief or
eating disorder or depression or
even just like having a problem with like your business, or you're an artist and you can't quite get this technique right. Someone else somewhere is going through the exact same problem. So it's so important that if you do feel alone in that, to find other people around you who can support you, because they're out there and they're looking for people too, but they're just waiting for someone else to make the first move. So it's really great to be able to get a group of people together. Like Poppy's created a group that everyone's going through the same thing, everyone can support each other, and everyone's so much happier and better off for that. So no matter what you're going through, no matter what your problems are, try and form a group or find some other people who are going through the same thing so you can support each other.
Definitely, yeah. She says there that everyone is carrying their own grief, and that's so important to remember. Even if you're in the lucky position that you haven't lost anyone yet, there is something that all people are carrying with them. That's just the kind of trappings of being a human, isn't it? It's important to recognise that, and to there's that thing they say of like you never know someone else's struggles, and so that person who's like shouting at you when in their car and they cut you up and all of that sort of stuff is like, you don't know what that person is dealing with. Obviously, you want to try and meet everyone with empathy, and that's not easy when they're being a dick to you. But yeah, I guess it's just understanding why that person might be being a dick. A lot to think about there, and that kind of leads on quite nicely to this clip where Poppy talks about creating an image that was speaking about her pain.
I did an artwork saying "This too shall pass," just with somebody crying and these like blue waves coming out of their eyes, and people were tagging each other, and I was like, God, people looking out for each other. Yeah. Through my artwork. So, I think that fragility can also balance the kind of physical strength and pride that you have in yourself.
Fuck me, man, you're really growing, aren't you?
I am. It's different, isn't it? It's
so
like,
good.
I do think if you are open to your pain, there is a depth that you see yourself in a slightly different way, and it doesn't have to be all bells and whistles and like, I'm a hot babe or whatever. It can also be, I'm a human and I'm struggling, and that's a kind of beautiful thing too.
I think in a world where Instagram is just what people want people to see, this kind of perfect version of stuff, it's nice for there to just be some honesty. And I feel like that's what sounds like comes across so well. Just the fact that you're being honest with people, whereas most people online aren't that.
And I think that's what I struggled with in those months that I was really in a dark place. I kept being like, I noticed that I was making notes in my diary saying, make an image for Instagram. Because obviously when you're an artist on Instagram, it's good to post regularly. And then I was like looking at it and I was like, make an image for Instagram. That is the most disgusting sentence I've ever... Make an image for you. Absolutely. Do you know what I mean? Make an image for you. And it took me a while because I thought, I haven't done a post this week. What do the people want to see? And I think once you let all that go and you're like, what do I need in my life right now? It will probably be what somebody else needs too.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Letting that self-conscious thing go. And I think that comes with confidence and looking into yourself a bit more and actually not worrying. Like, if this post gets 200 likes, that's fine.
I suppose it comes down to we mentioned in the mini series the Venn diagram that Toby Shinobi made of creating work that you like to make, but that also other people like, and then the intersection is that's the artwork that you like, that you can survive from. Then I think there's nothing wrong then with also experimenting. So Poppy's saying make an image not just for Instagram, so make something for you. In sharing the work that she has made that's no longer about like female positivity that most of her work was centered around, all of a sudden she took a risk, she took a different approach and started posting things about grief. They've done really, really, really well. So I think there's room for that kind of experimentation. And I suppose what she's referencing there is just getting caught in that trap of of becoming like a factory where you're not creating anything with soul anymore because you're just creating it for Instagram, for the guaranteed set number of likes that you know you will get by creating a piece of work in a specific way, which then I guess again brings us back to comfort zone, which we touched on several times in this episode.
I think that Venn diagram that Toby and Shinobi talked about is a really perfect way to think about it, where you've got, the things that you like doing, the things that will make you money, and you try and hit that cross section in the middle. But what I would say is, you can still come back into just doing things that you like and you can't make any money from. I think where things go wrong, and what Poppy was talking about there, is when things fall into that third section of you're just doing it for the money, you're not doing it for the love anymore, and you've lost that. So always try and stay in the two. The center bit, which is where you make money and you love it, that will be your comfort zone, hopefully, because that will sustain you. But you have to come out of that every now and again to grow, to be able to go back in, because otherwise that center bit is just getting smaller and smaller and smaller whilst you're sat in it.
Yeah, so this last clip is Poppy talking about making creative connections.
You know, just being interested in the creative makeup of the city that you're in, and you know, meeting new people, contacting, hey, I love your stuff, we should do something together. Or like, your work is incredible, even though they've got 200 followers or something, your work is amazing. It's really inspiring to me. Can I buy some of your stuff? You know, going to the Brighton Illustration Fair, meeting all the young illustrators there, because these people are going to be big. Like, they're talented, they're cool. Like, show some love and learn something from people that are making new work that's totally different to yours. And
you can learn something from anyone.
Yeah, I think the amazing thing there is we met Poppy first through reaching out to do a collaboration with her.
Literally exactly that, yeah.
So one of our members of staff, Kaylee, an amazing project manager, she was a fan of Poppy and wanted to just paint a mural with her. So got in touch, and we ended up painting a piece with Poppy, and that's how we first got connected and became friends. So yeah, Poppy is someone who is actively kind of fostering those kind of relationships. But I think we hear all the time from freelancers who are lonely. And I know a lot of you guys listen to us when you're working, and we've started calling it like creative companion. I think it was a listener who came up with that, wasn't it? Like, so, yeah. You're my creative companion. So we know that we're kind of like there for a lot of you as you're making work, but like, go out there and meet people. And what Poppy was saying was so important about not worrying where they are on the ladder. If you feel someone's work, like even if they've only got 200 followers, network with them, connect with them, and because you can learn from absolutely everyone.
Really, really good icebreaker is just going to someone and be like, let's collaborate. I like your work. Do you like my work? If yes, let's network. Like, it's such an easy in to get to know someone else, because then it's like you're together on it for a certain period of time. You can create something together, and then if you get on, you might become friends for life. It's like, now Poppy, I feel like, will be one of our friends for life. Just through a collaboration, we reached out to her and said, shall we do something together? And she said yes, which is amazing.
So those are 4 of our favourite episodes. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that trip down memory lane. And maybe we've highlighted some kind of new bits that you hadn't noticed in those episodes, or they're episodes that you hadn't listened to yet. So hope you guys enjoyed that. Next week is the launch of our season 2, so that's going to be absolutely huge. We're launching 3 episodes on one day.
This is kind of when we want to ask for a bit of a favour, I suppose. When we launch next week, if you've got any value from this show over the past year, please share it and kind of help other people find out about the show and find out about what they can learn here. And you can do that by posting on Friday the 17th, just letting everyone you know that season 2 is starting, and how much you've got from it in the past year and how much they could get from it in the next year.
So I would like to make some honourable mentions that,
yes, definitely,
because because obviously 4 episodes is not very many, and we could have spoken about so many more. So I think one for me was it's a creative thinking episode with Alex Manzi, and I listened to the full episode the other day. It's 80 minutes long, and there's so much in there. We go into so much depth about like answering lots of different questions that have been sent in. So that's a notable one for me. And there's sort of a lot of little nuggets about our story in there that we haven't talked about on other episodes.
Yeah. I think one episode that really hit me and literally hit me hard was our episode with Will Storr, where I came out of the interview and I had to say to David, like, I need to go home now. Like, I'm so mentally like mind blown from everything that he talked about. He talks a lot about like neuroscience, which I'm really interested in.
Yeah, I mean, I nearly put him in the best of, but I feel like his episode is, rather than like taking an individual quote and chatting about it, I feel like his episode is like, you've got to listen to the whole thing, because out of context, just a little bit here and there, it doesn't really work.
It's definitely an episode that if you haven't listened to yet, or you've listened to a long time ago, to go back and listen to. And also Seth Godin's book, This Is Marketing, and that Will Storr episode, to me, just like the two matched so perfectly. And it was that moment when I connected the two dots together from the two main points of those that my mind was just like, poof. Like,
yeah, because Seth's book is all about marketing and how you should position your product or service for the people that are going to be interested in that, to find it and to rave about it, and to build up a tribe that understand the mission that you're on. But then Will is kind of like why those people do that, like what's going on in their head to make them behave that way.
Like the science behind it, which was just like amazing. And I felt like those two should definitely network at some point, because like, it was amazing.
Another favourite for me was Adam J. Kurtz. I don't want to just list everyone we've had on the show, because they're all amazing, but I think Adam is such an interesting person to follow on social media, just because he's so good at distilling down the problems that creative people face and poking fun at it and taking the piss out of it. He's really great at that. But he's also like relentless. Like if you are doing something unethical or something wrong and you're exploiting artists, then he will call that shit out. And I love it. He's just brilliant for doing it.
And then I think like the final one for me that was like a massive standout was when we went to New York and interviewed Brandon Woeful. He was someone who I'd followed photography-wise for years and years and years. He's got over 3 million followers now, which is just insane. And it really made me realise that we can get anyone. Like, no one is completely unattainable. With the internet today, if you've got something that you can get someone else to believe in, you can connect with them and you can have that conversation and have that relationship. Just sent him a cold email, said like, this is who we are, what we're doing, why we're doing it. And we're going to be in New York. We'd love to interview you. And then getting a response back, I was just like, this is amazing. And then we actually did the interview and it was great to meet him. Really inspiring guy.
I love when you get those emails back as well. And they're like, oh, I've never done a podcast before, but I wanted to do yours. I really like that.
Yeah. And we had a couple of those this year where people were just like, Ivo, just love your name. It sounded really good.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a really nice feeling when you do get those responses back, because you send out so many emails and it's like all it takes is that one back to make it completely worthwhile.
I suppose I'll end on my old mate, Paul Elliott. It's a very, very early episode. So if you're a new listener, you have to go deep into the archives for this one. But we interviewed Paul Elliott, who I've known for 20 years. I started painting graffiti with him in 99, and I've run down various railway lines with him. I've hugged him in various bushes while we were hiding from the cops. And I've just had many, many bizarre experiences with that guy. And I loved that episode. Like he's so on it, now making music, and is also like a documentary maker, and has made this incredibly successful documentary about library music. And so that was another really fun one for me. So that's definitely on my honourable mentions list. So we hope you've enjoyed this episode, our best of season 1. Season 2 starts next week, because we ain't going to have a bloody break, because you know us by now.
Of course not.
You know us by now. So season 2, 17th of January 2020. Be there. Tell your friends. We love you.
Yeah.